Hey guys and ladies, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a very special episode of This Year in Perfume. And if you've been following my channel, you know that I went through an entire, I'm going to call it season of This Year in Perfume, where we went through the years and I showed you different bottles from my collection that were released in that year. And now we're going back and we're doing something very special, and we're ranking the my favorites in each kind of time frame. As we move along, you're going to notice that the ranking periods are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, because this episode is going to be the 1960s. Once we get into the 70s and 80s, my collection just explodes. And so you're going to see videos maybe even ranked in an individual year, which I can't wait to get to 1981. Some of my favorite years in perfumery are coming up, but this is the 1960s. And when I think of the 1960s, what just comes to mind, first thing that pops in your head when I think of the 1960s is, of course, the hippie, peace, love movement that, of course, kind of spread through America and the world. And I, of course, think of the Cold War between the United States and Russia that was really heating up. Of course, luckily, it stayed cold, of course, or we may not have the beautiful earth that we live on right now. And, you know, I think of things like the going to the moon in the end of the decade in 1969. And, you know, I think of JFK asking Americans, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. I almost got it mixed up there for a second. Living in modern times has warped my brain. It's not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country, right? That kind of you know, sense of individuality and standing up and doing what's right from the good old times, from when we look back at the good old times, although there probably was really never any good old times. If you really think about it and go back in history, there's always been amazing people and there's always been some terrible bad apples in the world. And, you know, one thing that I want to talk about before we move on to the video itself, it brings up a point in that I just want to say kind of a heartfelt thank you to everyone who has kind of been a part of my journey in every way. Even if you've touched my journey either on YouTube or personally collecting, you know, people who have sent me stuff, friends that I've made along the way, I just want to say a big heartfelt thank you, because, you know, like for example, one of my subscribers reached out. His name's Vlad. I won't give away any more of his information other than to say his name's Vlad. You'll probably see him in the comments. Amazing fellow. He reached out. He said, hey, man, you know, I've been loving your channel. I do artistic graphics and stuff on the side. If you ever need anything or want anything, let me know. And I said, you know what? It would be cool to have kind of a more professional banner when you go to my page on YouTube. And, you know, the old one basically had this. I'll show you what the old one had. It had this right here on it, which was a hand-carved picture of the Sistine Chapel, where, you know, God almost touches man, right? Almost right there. And it almost looks like man isn't even trying. Like, he's not even kind of interested. He's just like, you know, he's more interested in what's going on in the rest of the world. And God is vehemently trying to touch man. And they're so close, but not exactly. Not meant to be. And that was just, I just took a picture of that and put it up there, and he actually made a beautiful banner for me, you know, and he did it on his own time. He didn't charge me anything, and that's part of the journey. I think that coming into Fragcom and making these videos has kind of surprised me. I was expecting some things, and some things I was completely unprepared for. And one of them, I would say, is the kindness, the generosity of the community, the people who have sent me stuff, just little things like that. I mean, I think it looks great on the little banner. We put an Antaeus bottle. I think when he asked me, hey man, what fragrance do you want? You know, because I kind of gave him the idea of keeping the whole Sistine Chapel thing at the top, because that's what I had previously, but adding the element of perfume to it. And when he asked me, what fragrance do you want? And instantly Antaeus came to mind. I think I knew right then and there that officially Antaeus has dethroned Bel Ami as my favorite fragrance. Taste change, right? You can never be static. If you're static, you're not growing, you're not learning, and tastes always change. And Bel Ami is still one of my favorite fragrances of all time, but I think Antaeus has officially cemented its spot at the top of my mountain right now anyways. Ask me tomorrow. Could be different, obviously. That's the beauty of being a frag head, is your tastes are ever evolving, right? You're always learning more, changing, thinking, smelling, picking up different nuances of a fragrance that you thought you didn't like and now you love, right? That kind of thing. So just before we start this video on the decade of the 1960s, and we have a top 17 listed, by the way. I am going to go through my scent of the day. I just wanted to say thank you, just because that little act really touched me. And I know it's something small. I'm sure it seemed like, you know, I told him not to spend very much time with it. And, you know, he had it done in a day and it's beautiful. And I'm sure he didn't spend a ton of time on it. And it's a small act, but it means a lot to me. And those are the kind of, you know, things that I just was not expecting when I went into FragCom. You know, you always hear about kind of the bad side of the internet, right? The side that, you know, people come on here and they put you down and they make fun of you. And there are some of that. Not as much as I expected, actually, but there was a small subsection of the population. And doing this kind of has just made me realize the passion and the drive that you kind of have to have. And if anything shines through in my videos, I want it to be the passion. I want it to be the art, the passion of the art and the love of perfume that I have. And even if you don't listen to a word I say about the fragrances themselves, I hope the passion kind of shines through. That's kind of the number one thing for me is, you know, I hope it can be contagious. I hope it, who knows, can maybe ignite a flame and a fire and a desire to love fragrances as well. Because I think that this is one of the finest hobbies that a person can have personally. And I love it. Every day I get to wear something amazing, and I really consider it a blessing. You know, I'm not doing this to flex on you guys. I'm not like, look how many bottles I have. I'm doing this to try to build a community of people, you know, that can talk about our love and passion in a place where we're with a lot of like-minded people, and we're growing pretty fast, and I'm proud of that. Okay, 7.5 minutes of me rambling. Let's get started. So, scent of the day is actually the very first time I've worn this as my scent of the day. I've sprayed it on before bed a couple times, but this is the first time I've actually worn it as my scent of the day, and it's from the house of Abdul Samad al-Qurashi, and the name of the fragrance is Safari Extreme. Now, this is the limited edition version, which is 90 mils. Most of their bottles are 75 mils, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a different looking bottle. It's a square bottle with a square cap. This is the limited edition version, which the brand says there's no difference between the two, that this is just basically in a special edition bottle. You get an extra couple mils of juice for the same price, and it's just a different bottle. That's it. The juice is the same. That's what the brand says. The people online, of course, anytime there's a different bottle, they're going to say, oh, you know, obviously this is different. The other one is so much better. And I honestly have no clue whether that's true or not, because I've never smelled the one in the original bottle. But I like this. It's interesting. It's an interesting fragrance. It is, so when I think of this fragrance, I think of the kind of, you get the oud, obviously. It's a Middle Eastern oud type of fragrance, but it's kind of a step up from just a designer oud. But the problem for me is, even though there's a beautiful fresh mango in the top, and that mango oud combination with, of course, rose, and there's the freshness of what the brand says is French orange blossom, which sounds fancy, but just adds a little bit of kind of freshness to the fragrance. Very versatile oud scent to me. Even though there's kind of vanilla and musk and amber and that kind of thing. I wore it to work today. It worked beautifully in the office. And, you know, there's a little bit of sweetness, but it's not too much. Although, the thing about it is, the level of oud from what I have been sniffing lately, and it's just, I don't mean to sound bougie, but Arise L'Adore, Ensar Oud, Bortnikov, you know, Agar Aura, they have really kind of spoiled me with the level of oud. And this is just kind of a step back. I think if you're a big oud head, you won't like this. You know, this is beneath those kind of brands to me. It's probably, even beneath a brand like Ajmal. I think I'd rather just wear Ajmal's oud fragrances. They're similarly priced, I think, or maybe even Ajmal's are cheaper than this. I forgot how much this was, but you know, it's okay. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't sit up here and hype it and say, you know, it's a must buy. But if you're looking for kind of a step up from your designer level oud, but you don't want to go to the Original Doré, something like that, you could check out Safari Extreme. Okay, so that was my scent of the day, and I have enjoyed wearing it. So this is going to be a top 17. And the reason it's a top 17 is because these are the 17 fragrances I have in my collection from the 1960s. And a couple of them are actually even decants. I don't have full bottles. Most of these are full bottles in some sense. And you have to remember, when you're doing a ranking like this, if I have a full bottle of it in my collection, I love the fragrance. So don't think if something's number 17, it's bad, because it's not. Whenever you rank things, you have to... It sounds like a duh type of comment I'm going to make, but whenever you rank things, obviously some things have to be lower than others, right? Just go watch how hard it was for Rich Mitch and Eugene to kind of rank their top leathers. You realize that there are things in there that they absolutely love. They both put Bel Ami at number 10. And so, you know, that's the kind of thing where you realize when you're doing a ranking that you have to kind of make some hard choices. So I just say that because in a countdown, you may look at some of this and go, wow, I can't believe you put that at number 16 or 17 or 15. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I personally enjoy wearing some of these other fragrances more. And that's the way I do my list. These are kind of what my favorites are, okay, to wear. And so that's just, you know, take that with a grain of salt. Don't think if something's number 17 or something, it's bad. So speaking of number 17, let's start there at the end like we usually do. And I actually have this on a little blotter, which I want to smell the dry down again. Oh, it pains me to put this at number 17 because this is so beautiful, but I just never want to reach for it is the thing. Maybe I should try to wear it more because it is a chypre and I love chypres, and it's from Hermes. And it's from 1961. And now that I'm smelling this dry down, I'm really thinking that I'm making a mistake putting it at number 17. That maybe it should be a little bit higher, but I'm not going to change my mind now. But this just goes to show how hard these rankings are. But this is number 17. This is Caleche. So again, maybe I just need to spend some more time with it. But from my limited wearings, and this is a very old bottle, you can see how they used to do it back in the day. This is a very old bottle of Caleche, but it smells absolutely stunning. Doesn't smell like there's been hardly any degradation. I'm sure there's some in the top, but it's from Guy Robert. And if you know Guy Robert, he has a specific style that he really loves to try and, I'm not going to say copy, but let's say emulate or give homage to, pay homage to. So if you know fragrances like, for example, if you know this, if you know Lanvin's Puig Extrait, this is his favorite fragrance of all time, okay? Puig is. And he's constantly kind of, again, not recreated, but paid homage to Puig. And this is one of the most stunning fragrances. I think I prefer Puig, actually, to Calèche. Just one man's opinion. I much prefer Puig to Calèche, actually. And for me, the reason that I can put Calèche at number 17 and feel comfortable at least having it, even if it wasn't 17, I probably would have moved it up one spot and put it at 16 and put number 16 at number 17. But if you know the way that this style of fragrances kind of evolved over the years and over the decades, all you have to do is look no further than this. This is Amouage Gold Woman. And he made Gold Woman and he made Gold Man as well. And you can see this is a vintage Sultan of Oman version. This is what the old testers used to look like. And so this is a vintage of Gold Woman. And I think I just prefer, you know, if I'm going to wear this style, I think I've pretty much decided that he finally perfected it. He was working on it in the early 60s with Caleche. There's another Guy Robert coming out that he put out much higher at the list at the end of the video, and then he kind of perfected this style, I think, with Gold Woman. But if you like this style, and Gold Man, if you like this style, Caleche should definitely be on the list. It's a little too number 5 for me. The way the aldehydes work, I don't like number 5 either. That's usually lower on the list than most people expect. And so the aldehydes, the way that the florals kind of take over the fragrance, it just, for me, I had to put it here because I hardly ever want to reach for it because there are other Guy Robert fragrances I think that speak to my heart more. But again, maybe that just means I need to spend some more time with it to really understand it, because I know he was one of the best perfumers, best French perfumers. Number 16, so that was number 17, Caleche from Hermes. Number 16 is another, speaking of all-time great perfumers, we're going from Guy Robert to Edmund Rudnitska. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? So this is Edmund Rudnitska. Some people consider this his masterpiece. Some people consider this the greatest fragrance ever created for men. Many perfumers, when they ask about, hey, is there a fragrance that you wish you made? They always get the question, hey, if you could make one fragrance that you didn't make, what would it be? Many of them say it's Eau Sauvage. Now, not to be confused with Eau Sauvage Parfum, which is a Demaché fragrance, and I like that much more, by the way, than the original Eau Sauvage. And not to be confused with Sauvage, which is the blue Ambroxan bomb that all frag heads despise. This is Eau Sauvage. And Eau Sauvage came out in 1966. There's a couple fragrances that came out after this that I think are on this list, are inspired by Eau Sauvage. And there's a couple fragrances, or one fragrance in particular, that came out before Eau Sauvage, which I think actually really inspired Eau Sauvage, that I've never really heard anyone talk very much about. But Eau Sauvage, for me, and I understand if you love this style of fragrance, how this could be a holy grail fragrance for you. For me, it's not my cup of tea. I don't like that heavy citrus, fresh aromatic chypre. It's not my kind of chypre. My chypres are much more in the style of Rochas Femme or Mitsuko or Diaghilev or something like that, right? I like my chypres to be heavy, animalic, challenging, lots of transitions. This is kind of a citrus heavy, fresh. So the note listing says there's cumin in the top. And to be fair, Edmund Rudnitska did like to use cumin. But I don't get any cumin in this version. And this is a 2003 bottle. This is a 20-year-old bottle. So this is not a new one. I know the very first thing people who love this fragrance are going to say is you have to get an older bottle. And maybe they mean older, like 70s, 80s, 90s older. Not 2003. I don't know. But for me, it doesn't last very long. I get very little satisfaction out of it. Yes, the herbs, I get more rosemary and basil, but it just feels like this lemony citrus. I don't get even very much oak moss in the dry down. Definitely a little bit of sandalwood. And, it's just that if you like fragrances like Chanel's Pour Monsieur, which I think, Chanel's Pour Monsieur, Dior Sauvage, those kind of fragrances to me all kind of get lumped together in my mind. And they're just not my favorite style of chypres. In fact, they're my least favorite style. Chanel's Pour Monsieur EDT is a out and out masculine chypre. It's not for me. I don't know if you would consider, I don't think you would consider Eau Sauvage a chypre. I don't know what you would call it. Probably some sort of, for me, I would view it as like a fresher cologne style, like an eau de cologne style fragrance is what it feels like to me. Yes, there's carnation. Yes, there's orris root. Yes, there's jasmine. There's rose. There's patchouli. But even the patchouli in here comes off very light and ethereal. It's not that heavy, thick, anchoring patchouli. Patchouli really anchors a fragrance down. And I don't get that in Eau Sauvage, personally. So, yeah, it's just, I can appreciate the style. And I'm sure on a very hot day, it smells amazing. But it's not my, it's probably my least favorite Edmund Rudnitska creation to wear. So, Eau Sauvage, Eau de Toilette comes in at number 16. Now, number 15 may be a surprise to some folks, and I actually have very little experience with this scent. Excuse me whilst I hydrate. I have very little experience with this scent, and but I'm going to get more experience with this line. I'm going to do some early impression live streams with this. And this is from the line of Avon. And I have to say thank you again to Justin, who now goes by Roger Graves, for sending this to me. This is an older little Avon sample set. This is kind of how they used to look like. And the one we're going to be talking about today is called Wild Country. I don't know if you can see that very well, but this is kind of what the old Avon samples used to look like. And interestingly enough, I was on a live stream with the Scented Devil. Well, I wasn't on it. I was watching a live stream with the Scented Devil, who I really respect for his perfume knowledge, and just the depth and the breadth of knowledge that he has is unbelievable. Every time I watch, I always learn something new. You know, even though politically, maybe we're on completely different opposite sides of the aisle and we disagree on some things, I love listening to him talk about perfume, and I really respect his opinions. And when he says something, I listen because I know he knows his stuff. And so he told a story about how Harry Fremont and him were chatting about, you know, the amount of money that brands spend on the creation of a fragrance. And he said that Harry Fremont told him that sometimes Avon would actually spend 2 or 3 times what some of the bigger houses, I think maybe even he said 4 times sometimes, but at least 2 to 3 times on some perfume creations, what some of the bigger houses that charged way more than Avon were actually using in materials whenever they created the fragrance. And that really shocked me. I know Avon fragrances are very underrated. I know there's some old Avon fragrances that have Mysore sandalwood in them, you know, real oak moss, and all the things that the vintage frag heads like me go crazy for. And yet, whenever you say the word Avon, everyone immediately just turns off, you know. They just completely shut down. It's like the television when you get that beep signal, you know, and it just shuts. There's an emergency broadcast, beep, it's loud, you turn the TV off immediately, right? You don't want to hear that. That's what people do whenever anyone mentions Avon. And the reason is they were so ubiquitous. There was an Avon calendar, or, you know, there was a friend in the neighborhood's mom that sold Avon in every town, in every, you know, in every little town in the USA. It was just everywhere. And I think because of that, people tend to think Avons are cheap. They're not. They're not cheap fragrances. And if you trust your nose, you will know that. So I put a little bit here on this Chemi blotter that was sent to me of Wild Country. And I am really digging Wild Country. So Wild Country is kind of this powdery, I would almost consider it like a little bit of a barbershop, almost like a barbershop type fragrance, right? And it came out in 1960. When did Wild Country come out? Wild Country came out in 1967. And I don't know who the perfumer is. If anyone knows, I would love to know. I don't think Avon released perfumers, but what I like about this is basically like this take on a fougere, but there's a twist. And the twist is that the base of this has a beautiful tobacco note, and something in here comes across as slightly powdery. And when you mix that powdery, gentlemanly fougere type DNA with this lovely dry tobacco with sandalwood, I'm really enjoying it. Really like it. Now, this is the only way I've tried Wild Country, is on a card. I have yet to try it on skin. So I'm going to do some early impressions. Most of these I've smelled, but on card, I'm going to do some live stream where all we do is put these Avons on skin one day and just give my first impression. But long story short, for a spicy, if you like the powdery scents, if something like Zizane by, what's that house? The house is, if something like Zizane from Fragonard, I believe, something powdery like this old school powdery lavender kind of appeals to you, Wild Country is one to sniff out. Now, again, I think it was because bottles were so cheap. They were everywhere. I think as time goes on, there were probably reformulations. I honestly have no clue when this is from. But I can tell you that I am going to start hunting down some vintage Avons. That may surprise some folks, but I think there's some that are kind of worth grabbing in the vintage form. Okay, so Wild Country comes in at number 15. Number 14 is a Lanvin fragrance, the first of two on this list. And this is actually called Lanvin Figaro. And this is a decant very kindly, again, sent to me by one of you kind people out there. Again, a fragrance I never would have been able to get my nose on or smell. If not, actually, I want to spray it because it's been a little bit. Let me get a little decant or a little blotter. Let's spray Lanvin, shall we? Lanvin Figaro. Let me make a note of it real quick. So Figaro basically is... Figaro, interestingly enough, is very similar in... when I smell Figaro, it actually reminds me of a little bit of Wild Country. Not exactly, of course. And Figaro is much more on the green. Yeah, there's much more of this spicy green opening. But as it dries down, and I like Figaro more than Wild Country, obviously. It's why I put it higher on the list. But as Figaro dries down, you do start to get some of that woody... there's vetiver in here. I don't think there's a sandalwood note listed, but I get some sort of woodiness that starts to come out. This is just spicy, clean, fresh cut. And maybe I'm being suckered by the advertising. This is what the advertisement literally looked like right there. Almost like a guy that has a towel around his neck. Maybe he just is about to go to the barber shop or something. It's that kind of feel for me. But I love these old Lanvins. There's something special about them. And there's another one coming up very soon. And it's green, it's spicy. The lavender gives that traditional masculinity. This is very classic. This is for somebody who... For me, when I picture somebody wearing this today, like the man that would wear this today would be the man that would go to work. They would arrive early because being on time is late and being late is unacceptable, right? So they arrive to work early. If they're supposed to take a 30-minute lunch, they never go over 30 minutes, okay? If they're supposed to have two 15-minute breaks, they're back before the 15 minutes is up. And if they're supposed to produce X amount of widgets per day, they produce X plus 1. They're completely buttoned up. They are, if there is any impure thoughts, they keep them hidden away. They don't tell people their problems, right? It's that kind of man. That's the kind of man that I think about wearing Figaro. Somebody who is really by the book. If the light is malfunctioning and it won't turn green for them, they're not going to go, right? They're going to wait. They're not just going to go on red because no one's around and it's not changing fast enough or anything like that. They're going to follow the rules. They're not going to jaywalk, that kind of thing. Even if no one's around, they'll put money in the parking meter. It just gives me that old school, classic, gentlemanly vibe. And I really like Figaro. No one talks about it because it's extremely hard to come by. And it's discontinued. There are touches of, along with the greenness and this vetiver lavender thing and spices, the spices are a big part. There's also slight hints of maybe some very intelligently used florals, okay? So yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Figaro. I'll do a review on that one day. So Figaro comes in at number 14. Number 13 is a Rosendu Matu creation, and it is from 1968. It's Agua Brava, another one that kind of suffers, I think, from the fact that this is a cheapie. You can buy a current bottle of this for 12 bucks or something at discounters. Now, if you can swing it, pay 30 or 40 bucks and get yourself a vintage. Look at the cap of the one that I have. It almost looks like real wood, right? And it's not real, or maybe it's real wood, around, you know, and they just put the cap in there. Maybe the outside is real wood. It feels like real wood, which nowadays, of course, it's going to come with the crazy cheap plastic cap. It's going to come with different writing on the front. The writing won't look like this. They've kind of streamlined it. You'll be able to see the pictures. But if you can find one of these older versions of Agua Brava, it's absolutely beautiful. It's lavender and sandalwood, which is just a killer combination. When lavender and sandalwood is done right, it's hard to go wrong if it's high quality ingredients. There's also some masculine notes which will make an appearance in other fragrances later on in the video. You're going to get some pine, sage, juniper, leather, oak moss, patchouli, musk, vetiver, but that, you know, spicy, woody, if you know the way that they used to do those kind of fresh fragrances from the decades before the 60s, there's a little bit of that in there. There's a little bit of that old school men's cologne in Agua Brava, and it is an eau de cologne, but this version at least lasts a long time. I'm sure the older oak moss has something to do with that. I'm sure the oak moss really helps affix it to your skin, which now that the moss is gone, I'm sure this doesn't last as long, but this is a beautiful creation. One of Rosendu Matu's earlier creation. He created this with Marcel Carls, by the way. So, Agua Brava, a beauty. At number 13. Number 12. Now, this is the fragrance that I would actually choose to wear over Eau Sauvage Eau de Toilette. If I had to wear this style of fragrance, there's this one, and there's one other that's going to be coming up here even later. But this came out 1 year after Eau Sauvage, and I have no doubt in my mind, zero, that Eau Sauvage influenced this perfume. This is an Italian fragrance from the house of Capucci, and this is called Capucci pour Homme. Now, Capucci pour Homme, to me, smells like an Italian version of Eau Sauvage. It has that same citrusy bit. Listen to the note listing. There's basil, there's bergamot, there's lime, which all notes that you get in the opening of Eau Sauvage. And there's lavender, which is also a big player in Eau Sauvage. There's oak moss in the dry down, of course. There is some ambriness in the dry down as well. There's some musk. There is some patchouli. Again, it's almost like you're just taking the note listing, right? But there are some stark differences, and this is where I think I prefer Capucci pour Homme. Number one, there's anise in the opening. And anise will come to play a big, big role in masculine perfumery over the next couple decades. So you think about things from the 70s like Azuree pour Homme, huge anise fougere, one of the best fougères of all time. There's so many masculine fragrances that have the note of anise in them that come to the forefront. And so the anise is one big change. The other one is clove and pimento. And those two spices in the heart make it more interesting for me. There's also a little touch of frankincense. Sometimes I don't even get it, but when I do, you know, it's kind of more like a feeling. You know, rare. You're not going to get this Amouage frankincense or anything from an Italian Capucci pour Homme from 1967, but the frankincense almost adds like this feeling in the base. And I really enjoy this. This is a this is a well done version of this type of fragrance. Now, this DNA, this citrusy, 60s masculine fragrance is just not my favorite kind of perfumery, but I think this is a well done example. I think this is a better example of Eau Sauvage. Okay, next on the list we have number 11. And number 11, interestingly enough, gets almost no talk in the community. None. And almost for the exact same reason as Wild Country and Agua Brava. Almost for the same reason. It is ubiquitous. It's cheap. It's now made in China. It is seen as, a cheapie. No one of any class would wear this. Completely different than the vintage version. The vintage version is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, this almost moved up one notch. I had to kind of move it down. This almost competed for the 10th spot. Instead, it ended up at number 11, and it is Kanon by the House of Kanon. Now, I have an older bottle. If you take a look at the back, you'll see right here, you'll notice the distributor, and it says Maison Limited. Now, I had Mr. Jacques Masson on the channel. You can go watch that. It's under my interviews, which there is a playlist specifically for interviews. So you can go check out my interviews with Mr. Masson. And he was very kind to kind of join me and talk about the time that he and his family owned the Kanon trademark for distribution. And just some of the things that have kind of happened, and how we got to this point and how he ended up selling and how now the fragrance is made in China by Palm Beach Beauty and all this other stuff. But this fragrance, if you like the one that's going to end up number 1 on the list, okay, I think there's some very interesting correlations. And again, it came 1 year after the number 1 spot on the list. So 1 year after this came out, and I think there's some similarity, let's say, between the number 1 spot and in Kanon. There's key lime in the opening with Sicilian bergamot and clary sage, cinnamon leaf, lily of the valley, Egyptian jasmine, violet, and frankincense. And here you can almost get this frankincense. You can pick up much more of the frankincense than in Capucci pour Homme, with musk, Haitian vetiver, oak moss, sandalwood, honey, amber, and patchouli. And there's something, this orris, I think there's a little bit of orris root or iris or something that makes it slightly powdery that is not listed. And if you know the way that the number 1 spot is sometimes slightly powdery, you'll kind of get the same feeling here. But this is a beautiful fragrance. I'm a huge fan of Kanon, and especially these vintage bottles. I don't think the new scent does it any justice as to how good these older bottles were. So Kanon comes in at number 11. Number 10 is another discontinued in this version, but you can still find it. I am ignorant as to what the new version smells like, though, so I have no clue. People have told me that it's fallen off, but I have no idea whether the new one is good or not. But this is called Balafre. Balafre is a fragrance that was built by Lancome. And so Lancome, Balafre Monsieur is how it used to be put out. And this is a 50 ml splash that I got from my good friend Antonio from Italy, which apparently he won't ship to the United States anymore. Someone told me that, which is very sad. But if you're in Europe or something like that and you're interested in vintage fragrances, let me know and I can pass along his information. Balafre is basically this woody, spicy, again, there's lavender, there's bergamot, there is chamomile in the top of this, which kind of sets it apart, and cypress. So we're starting to see some different notes in masculine perfumery. There's carnation, which is a staple for old masculine perfumes, geranium, pine needle, clary sage, cedarwood, amber, oak moss, leather, and musk. And I love the leathery dry down. It's a classic spicy. I would say the biggest thing about this is you get this old school, spicy, woody scent profile. very well done, very old school, but I'm a big fan of Balafre. Again, gets literally zero love in Fragcom nowadays because this is the kind of stuff that doesn't get hyped. It doesn't get hyped by the free bottle brigade who gets the newest free $1,000 niche that they expect you to buy, even though they didn't buy it, and they talk about how good it is. You know, this is the kind of thing that will not get hyped by those people. But for a frag head who loves old fragrances and the history and, you know, understanding how the fragrance timeline kind of evolved, this is one that you should definitely at least put on the list. I know the list is never ending, seemingly never ending, and you can't own everything, but it would be great to get to smell something like this. Woody, spicy, masculine, some differentiating notes like chamomile and cypress, and the carnation in here with the spices and a little bit of leather in the base is absolutely stunning. So, Balafre. It's interesting that stuff people from the past used to kind of throw away or consider cheap. Now we're looking at it in almost exactly the opposite terms. That these are almost like gems to be, you know, really cherished, if you will, just because of the state of modern perfumery. It's so interesting kind of how the wheel turns, you know. Okay, so that was number 10. Number 9 is a decant. Number 8 and 9 are actually decants. Number 9 is something I wish I had a full bottle of, but they're very hard to find and very expensive. And this is called YSL. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is not the Y from... it's not this YSL, okay? Let me just take this out and show you guys. If you're thinking this YSL, you're completely wrong, okay? For some reason, over the last decade, YSL decided to rebrand the original YSL, which was released for women, and it's a Chypre, into a modern, boring, Sauvage clone, which is just kind of like this big blue Ambroxan thing. And I don't want to hear anyone leave a comment about how I just don't understand YSL. You're probably on the wrong channel for that. But the real YSL, and again, thanks to Rachel for sending this to me, from 1964, is one of the most beautiful aldehydic Chypres with these stunning fruit notes. So the peach and the plum are so just, you know, photorealistic. So well done. The green touches almost will remind you a little bit like you're smelling a precursor to Chanel No. 19. The green touches in here, the way that the quality of the ingredients are done. Now, there's no galbanum in here like in No. 19, but you can almost see the Chypre for women kind of ball rolling when you look at YSL, and then you compare kind of what how the Chypre for women category evolved. It wasn't long until the 1970s from 1964. But YSL, man, this is one that is definitely full bottle worthy one day. I just got to find a reliable seller that isn't trying to take me to the cleaners. So YSL comes in at number 9. Number 8, this is one that I've been spraying and kind of putzing around with for the last week or so since Anuj sent it to me. A couple weeks now, maybe. And my God, I am smitten with this. Like, I want a bottle, smitten with it. And it's the very first... it is the very first release from the house of Paco Rabanne. And it's called Calendre, which basically means like car grill, Calendre, okay? And it's a floral Chypre, and the notes are bergamot, citrus notes, lily of the valley, hyacinth, woody notes, and powdery notes. And you might look at that note listing and think, man, that doesn't sound too interesting. It kind of sounds boring. You could not be further from the truth. This is one of the most interesting 60s fragrances I have ever gotten my nose on. The original release date was the very end of the decade. So it came out in 1969. Okay, the original Eau de Toilette came out in 1969. And so there's aldehydes, bergamot, the vintage note listing, aldehydes, bergamot, rose, lily of the valley, geranium, jasmine, iris, sandalwood, vetiver, oak moss, musk, and ambergris. And when you smell Calendre, you can really get that powdery iris. So when they say powdery notes, when you look up the modern version, okay, because that was the first note listing I read you was the modern version, it's the iris, okay? The sparkliness in the base is the ambergris. The materials are out of this world good. Oh, I'm going to have to, actually, as soon as this video is done, before I upload it, I'm going to tell Anuj to set me aside a bottle. Because I think I have to have this in my collection. 1969, what a floral chypre they created. And, you know, I don't know if the new version holds up to the vintage. But I can tell you that this is an amazing perfume, and I completely see why Paco Rabanne kind of took the world by storm before releasing Paco Rabanne Pour Homme. What a fragrance he came out with in 1969, and what a trendsetter. And rest in peace, Francisco Robanetta. He just passed away within the last month, and what a trailblazer he was. So Calendre comes in at number 8. Number 7 is the final Lanvin on this list. And this is from the thumbnail. This is a kind of travel pack, if you will, and beautiful leather, actually, real leather. It smells amazing. It smells like there's so many years on this leather. And this is Monsieur Lanvin. So this is the Eau de Toilette. This is the aftershave, and I love this stuff. I'm actually thinking about selling it though, because I don't think I would get the use out of this that this deserves. Like the aftershave, the soap. Like the soap is still in its packaging and unused. And so I'm thinking about maybe selling this and just trying to find a partial bottle or something. Like I don't need 200. What is this? 100 and this is 100 ml. So yeah, I'm just thinking about maybe moving on from it. But the scent itself is absolutely amazing. It is, for me, I would say Monsieur Lanvin for me is the precursor. And I think what probably, this is probably what someone like Rudnitska was sniffing when he ended up putting out Eau Sauvage. And the reason I say that is you can get that citrusy style in Monsieur Lanvin. There's lemons, there's bergamot, there's sage in the opening. I love sage as a note, by the way. Very herbal, masculine note, right? And the heart is carnation, geranium, jasmine, rose, sandalwood, cedar, and cinnamon. And it just feels like it has more depth than Eau Sauvage or Capucci Pour Homme. And the base is oak moss, labdanum, leather, musk, myrrh, tonka, vanilla, and civet. So when I smell Eau Sauvage or when I smell Capucci Pour Homme and Lanvin Monsieur, I think that, you know, someone like Rudnitska kind of stripped down something like Monsieur Lanvin, took out the labdanum, took out the vanilla, you know, and the biggest note that he took out is the civet. There is a huge animalic civet in Monsieur Lanvin, one of the best I've ever smelled, actually. And it is missing in Eau Sauvage. Now, they claim that there's cumin in the top. I also don't get the cumin. And so I'm wondering if these older bottles of Eau Sauvage were closer to kind of the animalic touches of Monsieur Lanvin. That's just not, it's just not there now. Even the one I have from 20 years ago, it's just kind of like a fresher, easy to wear eau de cologne. And again, if that's your thing, I could see how you could completely love it. I would take Monsieur Lanvin any day. But yes, it's kind of a cool little package, you know, with the soap and the aftershave. So Monsieur Lanvin comes in at number 7. Number 6. Now, number 5 and number 6 I really went back and forth on. And if you've been following the channel, you know one thing. You know that there are two fragrances that are joined at the hip. In fact, I'm going to introduce them together, as they deserve to be introduced together. Number 5 and number 6 are Dioressence at number 6, Chamade at number 5. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know that these two, I've said they were joined at the hip from the second I discovered them. Actually, I did an unboxing video of Chamade maybe 7 months ago. I can't remember exactly how long ago. You can go look it up on the channel. But when I first smelled this, I didn't think I liked it. It is such a complex, detailed, intricate, challenging. It's a shapeshifter. It is one of the most complex Guerlains I've ever smelled. But at its heart is the Guerlain, and you have to wear this multiple times is what it ended up coming down to. And what fragrance really got me to understand the DNA is Dior Essence by Guy Robert. They both came out in 1969. They're the only two fragrances I think I've ever smelled that share this DNA. A DNA which I don't think I've ever smelled since before then or since then. Dior Essence is kind of a floral chypre, if you will. But it also, that's selling it short, because it's not just a floral chypre like YSL-Y is. I would say YSL-Y is an out-and-out floral chypre, okay? I would say Calendre is a floral chypre. I would not just say that Dioressence is a floral chypre, because it just saying Dioressence is a floral chypre, you know, I think degrades the beautiful, there's this almost like, it's almost like you have, you know, 3 periods, right? You have 3 periods in a hockey game or something. And that's how this fragrance feels to me. There's a top, there's a mid, there's a base. The base is, the base of this, with this benzoin, styrax, this very waxy styrax, it almost feels like you're smelling the creation of like a new genre or something, right? You know it's kind of a chypre. It's got the labdanum, it's got the bergamot in the top, and it's got the oak moss. Of course, you have to have oak moss in a chypre. But there's more. There's more to this. And that's what really intrigued me, is this, you know, heavier benzoin, styrax, vanilla base, mixed with all the flowers, mixed with the orris root, the powdery orris root, the sparkling opening. It smells like ambergris in the opening, real ambergris. Amazing. Aldehydic. There's all kind of touches here. The florals are stunning. And again, I would much rather wear Dioressence than Caleche for my personal taste. That's why this is obviously number, we are at number 6 and number 5. And so this is what kind of opened the door for this DNA. And for the longest time, I always put Dioressence ahead of Chamade. Now, I've been wearing this to bed recently, and just kind of testing and going back and forth. And I think I've come to the conclusion that now that the door is open, I'm willing to walk through it and say, this is the superior fragrance. It took me a while to get there. For the longest time, I thought I appreciated this more. I think this is more, approachable to somebody who's newer to this style of fragrance, because these are unique as far as I'm concerned. They're also unique in that they both came out in 1969. And I'm very curious. I'm sure there was some borrowing amongst the French houses. I'm sure maybe there were some spies. What's Jacques Guerlain doing? What's Guy Robert doing? You know, that kind of thing, right? There's an old story that Guy Robert was testing a big hunk of ambergris. And the way you test ambergris is you kind of take a piece and rub it between your hands or whatever and warm it up, and to kind of help release some of the auras, right? So he was rubbing it in his hands. And of course, when he's like, oh shit, this is one of the best ambergris hunks I've ever smelled. This'll, you know, a piece of ambergris this big could kind of keep Dior running for a decade. And so he's like, sure, I'll take it. And it was a lot of money back then. He goes to the, and he's been, you know, racking his brain around building this new fragrance. And so he goes to the sink and he washes his hands, and they have some cheap Dior knockoff soap, right? Of Miss Dior. So I don't know what the knockoff was supposed to be of. And he washes his hands, and when the ambergris mixes with the cheap knockoff Dior soap, he has the idea for Dioressence. I don't know if that's story true or BS or what, but the fact that both houses put out something that to me share more than just a passing resemblance was very interesting to me. But I think Chamade is much more complex. And even though both bottles have this texture, now, if you look at this, there's these lines, right? This bottle doesn't have it, but if you actually look up the Pure Parfum of Chamade, it's an inverted heart. One of the most beautiful bottles I think I've ever seen. And it's got these lines, just like Dior Essence does. Just like the Dior bottle, there's these lines that kind of go through it. And that's how Chamade feels. It feels like every line, every hump is a change, is a shift. It's one of the most, here, I'm going to spray it real quick since I'm just talking my head off about it. To me, it is one of the most, oops, forgot about this thing. So, it is one of the most deep, you definitely can't judge this on first spray like I did during that first impression. And that's part of the problem with first impressions, is sometimes you really have to spend the time with the fragrance. This one is just, it's beautiful. You know what I just got right there was this resinous green galbanum. And that is one of the difference is Chamade has a little bit more, it has a little bit more galbanum. And you don't get the galbanum in Dioressence. And Chamade has the Guerlain, of course. So you get that, you can almost tell it's the Guerlain of the two right away. But it has the same kind of floral heart, aldehydes in the top with citruses, except for Chamade adds hyacinth. So there's no hyacinth in Dioressence. There's no galbanum. Those are the two additions from Chamade's side. And clove. Sorry, there's also clove. And instead of using Styrax in the dry down, Chamade uses Tolu balsam and Peru balsam. So I think they kind of get to the same end is the thing. The base of Chamade is amber, benzoin, Peru balsam, sandalwood, Tolu balsam, vanilla, and vetiver. And there is this lilac note that you will get if you know the lilac note that sometimes kind of comes forward in Mitsuko, right? You'll get a little bit of that in Chamade. And so after some time, I've finally come to the conclusion, long story short, is that I've come to the conclusion that Chamade deserves the spot ahead of Dioressence. And that's where it's going to stay, I think, for the rest of its life. But I still love this, okay? This is not any sort of knock on Dioressence, other than that this really opened the door to me to help understand Chamade, I think. Oh, beautiful. Okay, so that's number 6 and number 5. Number 4 is probably one of the, it's a fragrance that's gotten a lot of hype recently. I've seen these Pure Parfums go on eBay for $1,000, which is insane. Don't pay that to the scalpers, by the way. They can F off. This is Versailles. And I have a full review of this on the channel. I'll leave it at that and say if you really wanted to learn more about Versailles, go check that out. But Versailles is basically this Oriental by Jean Desprez from 1962. And it is, it's the grandmother of fragrances like Francesca Bianchi's Under My Skin or Papillon Salome. This is where it all started, this powdery, animalic Oriental. And I say animalic because the base is just like this ball of, civet, this pissy, almost unwashed civet, almost like these ladies right here on the front were doing some naughty deeds over the last couple days and they never took a shower. There's a little bit of that in here. This is a sexual fragrance. It doesn't even try to hide it. It's in your face, sexual, overtly. I really like it though. Go check out my full review if you're so inclined. Oh, Chamade is beautiful. One day I want to find the Pure Parfum. I want to find the Pure Parfum of Chamade and Jiki and all these other Guerlains I've never smelled in Pure Parfum form. Rachel very kindly sent me a couple precious drops of Mitsuko in the Pure Parfum, which I've never smelled. So I'm on a mission to smell some more of the Pure Parfum. So at number 3, now the last 3, this is the easiest part of the list for me. I really struggled with some parts of the list. These last 3, no doubt about them. They're in this order in my mind exactly. Not a question, okay? And number 3 is Aramis by Aramis, which is a creation by the great Bernard Chant. And Bernard Chant's one of my favorite perfumers. He actually has the next one on the list as well. He has number 2 and number 3 on the list. And he does these spicy, leathery chypres better than maybe anyone ever. I have a perfumer's video. I call my videos on perfumers portfolio videos. I have a perfumer's portfolio video up on Bernard Chant, and I'm pretty sure I ranked them. I'm pretty sure it's a ranked perfumer's portfolio video. I can't remember. If I haven't ranked it, I will rank it one day. But just the way he does these leathery chypres with the myrtle, and I love myrtle, by the way, and artemisia, and you know, spices and all of this stuff, and that leather, man, the way he does it, it just reeks of masculinity. If you want a fragrance, you know, that just reeks of masculinity from the 60s, you know, of all of these fragrances that I'm talking about, and there's some that really reek of masculinity to me, you know, Kanon, some would say Eau Sauvage with that citrusy, old school masculinity, the spices of Balafre, you know, that kind of thing. Can't hold a candle to this. This is the most, in my opinion, the most masculine of all of the masculine targeted releases. Now, I have another fragrance coming up next, which I actually think is even more masculine, even though it was made for women. And he made it 5 years after the original Aramis, but you can still see this DNA kind of circling around. So this is spicy, leathery. If you know Cabochard, which he did about 5 years before this, you'll get an idea of kind of where we're at with Aramis. But man, if you've never smelled these, if you can find one that says cologne and not eau de toilette, that would be my recommendation. That means you're getting an older bottle. God, the thyme in here is beautiful. Thyme, so green and spicy, and there's a clover note, which now I just associate clover with Aramis, and there's some castoreum in the base, so it's a little bit animalic. It's like an animalic leather in the dry down. Just a beautiful creation. And number 2 is, again, by Bernard Chant, and it's from 1969, marketed for women, which blows my mind. I still can't believe that. This is the great Azuree. I decanted some of this to a friend. Oh, and some of it's still kind of around the outside. Oh, it's so beautiful. I am in love with Azuree. It's one of my favorite. It really kind of pains me to put this as number 2, because I think this is one of the finest fragrances money can buy, period. Like, I don't think you can spend your money on a better fragrance. I think this is top of the line for me as far as like a leather chypre goes. Oh, God. Oh, man. It's orgasmic. It is, it's very hard to describe, first of all. But he uses aldehydes better than any perfumer ever, I think. I think he is the master of aldehydes, Bernard Chant. And it's so green and dark. Dark green. Yes, there's some rose and ylang-ylang and stuff like that, but just the way that he kind of mixes it all with the oak moss and the patchouli and the amber and everything that's in here, it's unbelievable. And I can't believe they discontinued Azuree. This version anyway. They re-released it in a new bottle, which I heard is not very good from the Wafts from the Lofts guys. They did not like the new Azuree at all. So if anyone says it's good, I haven't heard that, but the Wafts from the Lofts guys hated the new Azuree, but I've never smelled it. So, and number one, and even though I said it really pained me to put Azuree at number 2, there's no doubt in my mind that it was number 2, because number 1 is one of the greatest fragrances of all time. One of the, in my opinion, one of the, from 1965, it's a Guerlain, and it's for men, and it's, I have 2 bottles of this. I have one that looks like this, which I show off on the channel a lot, and I have an older bottle that I don't show off as much because it stays under lock and key, and it is this. And that's what the older bottle of Abbey Rouge. I would love to find. I was actually texting Anuj from Enchante before the video, asking him if he had a Eau de Cologne version of Abbey Rouge. It originally came out in an Eau de Cologne. I would love an old Eau de Cologne bottle of Abbey Rouge. But Abbey Rouge is number 1. It's kind of the masculine Shalimar, if you will. That's the best way to kind of describe it, I think, is the masculine Shalimar. And here I'm going to spray some on real quick. So Abbey Rouge is, you know what it is? When I think of stuff like carnation, rosewood, spices, that lemon, it's probably one of my favorite lemons in all of perfume, honestly. That lemon rosewood spice is so suave, so smooth, so just, this is the height of elegance to me. And what's so funny about it is you used to be able to buy these Listerine bottles from Guerlain for like 30 or 40 bucks at discounters. What an absolute steal. You cannot get perfumery at this level for $40 nowadays. It's impossible. Oh, it's so beautiful. Just perfection. You know what really makes it for me? What really is the cherry on top for me is this horse like leather that comes out in the dry down. This soft. You know, because Jean-Paul Guerlain was obsessed with hunting. And Abbey Rouge, the red, is actually supposed to come from the red, either hunter's jacket or hunter's pin. I think you get a pin if you become like a master or something. I can't remember the actual story. I've read it before, I just can't remember. But I think it's inspired by maybe the red hunting jacket that when you think of like hunters in England. Oh God, it's so beautiful. And you know what? I just recently reviewed a fragrance called Ettore Bugatti from the early 90s, I think 1992. And I almost thought it was an Abbey Rouge clone. And at the time, I said that it's a very, very good clone, and it is. And I think it's discontinued, but you can still find bottles of Ettore Bugatti floating around. This must have been Ettore Bugatti's favorite fragrance. For him to do that is the very first masculine release they put out. But I sprayed Abbey Rouge on a card, and I sprayed Ettore Bugatti. I was wearing it as my scent of the day. You can go check out my early impression video of that. Keith from Manly Scents very kindly sent me a very generous decant of Ettore Bugatti. And I mentioned that I really liked it. It was a great fragrance. But, you know, I said that it's basically, you know, why not just own Abbey Rouge for me? And smelling Abbey Rouge on skin now, it's been a while since I've sprayed it on skin. Oh my God. It is, it's so, so good. I mean, you know, I think that you have to have a certain amount of gravitas to wear Abbey Rouge. This is not what you smell on, you know, just your fellow colleague at work. Or this is not what you smell when you walk into a, you know, fast food restaurant and order food. It's not what you smell even when you walked into the mall. Even if you walk into a store like Dillard's, you don't expect to smell this. I would expect to smell something like this, you know, when you're going to kind of a black tie event. It's that kind of feeling for me. But I don't have to be in those clothes to make me feel that way is the thing. I could wear this with, you know, flip-flops and a t-shirt. I could. It does. I wear my fragrances anytime. It doesn't bother me. I wear Diaghilev with flip-flops and a t-shirt if I'm sitting home. It doesn't matter to me because I wear the fragrance for the experience myself. But the image it projects is of a very suave, sophisticated, elegant, well-mannered, well-cultured, well-spoken, you know, knowledgeable on history, knowledgeable on human behavior. It's that kind of person that kind of comes to mind. Maybe a gray beard, someone who's been around the block a little bit, someone that has some gravitas about them. Some, you know, they've been through the wars and they've kind of escaped or came out on the other side victorious, if you will. And oh, it's so beautiful. And ditto for Chamade. So thanks for watching my 1960s countdown. Let me know what your favorite fragrances are from the 1960s. I'm sure there's some you guys have that I don't have. Let me know what you think of my little countdown here. Let me know what some of your favorites are. And do like the video. I know I don't say that enough, but it does help with the algorithm and all that stuff. I get new people all the time that write me now, and they're just the most beautiful messages. Like I said, the kindness and the closeness of Fragcom and just how amazing you guys are. And we're very lucky to have the community that we have. And it really is what drives me to continue to do this. And, you know, you guys really lift me up and it keeps me going. So I have to give a heartfelt thank you for that. So appreciate everyone watching. I know my videos are long. You can put me on 2x speed and it'll go much faster. But I hope that there's at least some helpful bits of knowledge in here. Hope you're learning something about fragrance history and some of the different fragrances in my collection. And so appreciate everyone watching. Cheers, and I'll hopefully catch you next time. Bye-bye.